We're going to be tackling a subject very dear to our hearts, and I'm guessing yours as well, today, which is what's happened to Agile. So those of you who've been in this industry any period of time will know that software development techniques have evolved over the last 20 plus years. But the rate at which software is delivering benefit doesn't seem to have changed a great deal. And many of the organizations that we talk to express frustration that they're not able to access many of the benefits that Agile methods were meant to be delivering. And we as a supplier in this space obviously come across it quite a lot ourselves. We've done over 140 projects in the last 4 years, trying to apply the principles of Agile as authentically as we can. But we too have struggled in some places to find ways to make it easy for organizations to adopt our techniques. Those that have are seeing some really profound change happening very quickly, and we'll share with you some of the experiences of one of our clients perhaps a little later in this presentation as well. So what I'm going to cover off today really is three things. First of all, what we perceive to be the problem or the issue with Agile. Some very simple principles that were laid down probably about 16, 17 years ago, which many organizations have tried to adapt and adopt, but have struggled to get to work with their traditional development methodologies. So we'll explain what we've learned over the last 4 years or so, and in fact before that as well, because many of the people working in 3 weeks have been in this industry for a long time, and have also kind of been at the front end of the frustrations that perhaps we've all felt in being able to see an outcome from software development. And then we'll talk about what we believe any organization can do really to become super agile and start using these techniques to really positive benefit and deliver, really valuable and meaningful, relevant outcomes to their organizations. So let's start really by looking a little bit at the history really of software development. And it was originally, I guess, designed for an analog world where what we were doing was really automating a lot of manual processes in a very, very systematic way, and not really perhaps questioning the value of those processes too deeply, but just saying we've got to be able to automate this. A lot of change has gone on in society generally, perhaps over the last 20 or 30 years, and our observation would be that the software development techniques, although evolving, have not really been able to keep pace with that change, and that's become particularly relevant and visible now in the digital age, where we're seeing change happening at an ever accelerating rate. And thirdly, the lack of customer engagement. So if you look again at how typically organizations have developed software solutions over the last 20 or 30 years, customers tend to get involved sporadically, and end users as well in the process. So there might be some engagement during the requirements gathering stage. There might be a little bit of engagement when early designs are done, and then at user acceptance testing. But they're not really, there's no continuity there. They're not really involved end to end. And a lot of the results of that are that the software that's developed is no longer relevant. And there's a huge amount of waste. And we know this to be true. There have been a number of studies that have talked about this. The Standish Group monitor this kind of stuff, as do the American government. So the US Defense Department did a study a few years back now, but it showed that there was a colossal amount of waste in software development. Standish reckon between 65 and 75% of software that's written isn't actually used or never adopted, which is extraordinary, really. But it's kind of indicative of the problem we face here around making sure that the work that's being done to develop software is delivering valuable and relevant outcomes. So again, if you kind of put this onto a timeline, we can see that back in the 70s, systems development methodologies, companies in the UK that I was working with, Hoskins Group, for example, came out with something called SDM, which was a mainframe development methodology broadly adopted by a lot of organizations in Europe. Then we saw things like RAD, Waterfall, and eventually Agile emerged around about the 2000s. And sprung a whole series of other techniques around it, which were all aimed at trying to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of software development, like Kanban and Scrum. The failings of this really, are very evident. It's taking too long to deliver outcomes for organizations. We're working with several large enterprises who are working on 9-month, 12-month, 24-month development life cycles, and so much changes during that time. It's very difficult to see how you can maintain the integrity of an idea from the outset to an outcome over that period of time. And there's a lack of end user engagement. We're not really engaging users quickly enough. We're not engaging them often enough. We're not getting really valuable and relevant feedback. And we're creating reams of documentation. So you look at some of the scoping documents or the requirement gathering documents that are produced by IT departments and by consultancies for systems development activity, and it runs to reams and reams. You just wonder, well, is anybody actually going to read this? Are we going to know for sure that it's delivering against this stuff? The process itself is not particularly collaborative. There is a tendency for the developers to lock themselves away in a room. There's a tendency for the IT infrastructure and the IT consultants within the business to be quite closed and not working outwardly towards the organization. And it's suffering from analysis paralysis. Very often we get involved in projects when there's been an early stage requirements gathering process undertaken. There's been an outline business case put together, but it's not sufficiently robust to get the full budget, and we need to demonstrate there is going to be value in an outcome. So it's kind of indicative of the fact that it's quite easy for organizations to tie themselves in knots before they've had an opportunity to see an outcome. So back in 2001, a group of people got together in the mountains of Utah. These were, in the main, quite techie people in the IT industry, but people who, had a desire to see change happen and to try and see some benefit from the possibilities of open source software and the emerging digital age. And they came up with a manifesto for Agile, which was based around 4 core values. Number 1, a focus on individuals and interactions instead of processes and tools. Number 2, having the ability to develop working software as quickly as possible rather than focus on developing comprehensive documentation. Making the customer the center of things and collaborating with the customer rather than getting involved in lengthy contract negotiations. Responding to change rather than following a plan. So recognizing that we're in an ever-changing world, and if we develop a 9-month or 12-month plan, the chances are by the time we get to the middle of that, a lot of the assumptions that we had at the outset are going to be wrong, and we're going to need to make change happen anyway. So having an environment where you're actually using change to create the outcome is an incredibly empowering place to be. So these 4 values, as they described them, were the things that this group of people really believed would change the way that software got developed, to make it more relevant, to avoid all of that waste, to ensure that customers were engaged, and make sure that we weren't making it too internalized. What happened over the next 16 years? Well, a lot of organizations have tried to be agile. A lot of the companies that we talk to have got departments that are adopting agile tools and techniques, but they're still suffering from a lot of that the baggage and the legacy, if you like, that surrounds them, which are making it increasingly difficult to deliver the kinds of outcomes that Agile was there to try and do, which was to really get a valuable and relevant outcome in the hands of people who need it as quickly as possible. The traditional technique is all about big. It's about big thinking, big programs, and a big outcome. We believe that actually to be successful with this stuff, you need to be able to chunk it down into very specific problems and think about it in terms of how can we solve individual problems end to end, and then think about how we actually scale it, rather than trying to work out, you know, 1,000 different use cases at the beginning, and being, you know, risk averse because you're thinking, well, if we haven't developed every single risk and every single use case here, the chances are it's going to fail. Well, that's not necessarily the case. So the idea that a lot of organizations are now trying to adopt is this thing around minimum viable product. And it's very much at the heart of what 3 Weeks has done with Agile, which is to focus on one problem and try and develop a solution end to end. So work out what's feasible, what's valuable, what's usable, and what's going to delight the customer. Take a thin slice, if you like, through a bigger problem and develop something that's working for a customer, because the chances are if we move across that triangle on the right-hand side from left to right, a lot of the customer expectations are going to be met by the first 2 or 3 slices of that. So by the time we've done the whole thing, it's actually a very good outcome. So the 3 Weeks approach has been developed really over the last 4 years by the group of people who founded our company to really leverage those 4 values in Agile. So what we do is we start with the idea. So what's the problem that we're trying to fix? We then hold a definition workshop with a business stakeholder, with a person who's got the problem. And that typically takes 1 or 2 hours. And in that session, we aim to really collect 3 things. First of all, a very crisp and concise definition of the problem we're trying to fix. The second thing that we look for is a statement that describes the outcome we're going to produce within a limited period of time, which may not necessarily be 3 weeks, it might be 3 months, but it'll be a relatively short period of time. And then the third thing we do is to ask the business stakeholder, where's the first customer we can engage with, or the first end user, within the next 24 hours, because what we're going to do is to start coding. And we're going to start coding against a group of things called core capabilities. So in that definition workshop, we'll describe, or we'll get our business stakeholder to describe 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 core capabilities that the end product must have, the things that it must be able to do. And then we'll start coding that up. So within 2 days, probably, we'll have a bit of that product working. It'll be coded and it'll be working. And we'll share that with an end user to get their feedback and ask some questions around, so what next? What in addition to this? Does this work for you? What else can we add to it? What are the enhancements that are needed? And we use that feedback to then, with the business owner, agree a prioritized list of additional functionality or features that we build into the product. So this kind of iterative approach, very, very tight iterations, very often every 2 or 3 days, is actually delivering meaningful outcomes and a viable product for customers to use. It's very, very outcome focused. We talk about outcomes, we don't talk about features. It's extremely rapid. So we will typically be doing up to 2 or 3 software production releases per day during this development approach. So it's something that is probably quite alien to a lot of environments that perhaps you guys have worked in. And most crucially of all, it's about maintaining this end user or customer engagement from day one throughout the entirety of the project. This ensures that we're only doing work which is going to be valuable to the end customer and the end user, and will give them a product which they know is going to be of use to them in future. There are certain benefits to this approach. So adopting those 4 values of Agile and embedding them in our approach is delivering some extraordinary outcomes. It is extremely capital efficient. So we don't need massive budgets to kick off projects like this. But what it does is give clients something which is tangible and allows, you know, the release of funds for the bigger projects much more easily. So a lot of projects that start using this super agile approach can be funded out of OPEX rather than CAPEX. But when it does come to thinking about the bigger spend to get the fuller solution, it's far easier to get sign-off when you've got a tangible outcome that you can demonstrate is being used by customers. It ensures a far better quality of solution and a far better end user experience because it's giving them things that we know that they are going to be using. So what I'd like to do is just share a short video with you now, which is Trevor Woods. He's the Chief Information Officer from Monash University and is one of the people who's really bought into this approach and is leveraging it to drive a really significant change program in Monash University.
Three Weeks is a software development company that can deliver a solution in a few days or 3 weeks. But the real value is bringing a different approach and thinking to solving problems and the realization that things can be solved in just a few hours or days and they don't need 15 or 18 months to do. 3 Weeks has also helped with understanding technically what's possible and how you could quickly prototype something and see it working on the screen. The approach 3 Weeks takes helps us very quickly identify the core of the process problem, build a prototype, and test that immediately with the people that need to use, resulting in a much better outcome and fixing problems much earlier in the whole development cycle.
As you heard there, what I think Trevor's experienced is it's not just about the elements of the approach. It's a strategic and it's a cultural change. And what he's been able to do is to kind of leverage the components of Agile in a way which has really accelerated the way that change is happening within Monash University in quite a profound way. So the engagement model that we have is really the guts of this, which explains how this approach is able to deliver benefits to any organization, really. So if we look at the right-hand side of this engagement model, we have a very tight engagement with the business stakeholders. So these are the people who've got the problems, who need to see change happen rapidly, who want to see a digital solution delivering an outcome. And then we're also in that triangle calling out obviously the customer or the end user, because we are wedded to an approach here which requires that engagement very early on in the process and throughout. And also the IT departments within organizations who are providing us with the infrastructure and the integration to be able to deliver value. And then on the 3 Week side, consultant doesn't really describe the role in full. It's more of a program manager, BA, and a solution architect. So somebody who's really got an understanding of what the technology solution needs to deliver as a business outcome, and is able then to marshal the resources to do that. And then 2 developers, both of whom are full stack developers, able to work end to end on the solution. And any additional resource we require, we kind of hang off this triangle in one of the 3 points. So quite often we'll have UI and UX expertise at various stages, or infrastructure expertise, testers, etc., etc. But keeping the project team small really does focus on, again, delivering a meaningful outcome for our customers. So the success factors around this, and these are things that we believe that any organization can adopt. It's not something that's just unique to us. I think it's a case of recognizing what these factors are and then working out your own plans for how you can ensure that you have these things in place to deliver on the promise of Agile. So first of all, number one, full stack developers. That really does make a difference. If you can have people who can work on the code end to end, to actually work on the outcome is really, really crucial. The consultant who is this quasi project manager, BA, and solution architect, Customer engagement day one, absolutely critical, and throughout the project. And we'll mention it many times, but it's such a critical success factor for us. We know that without this, we begin to see that the ideas and the principles behind the project can very quickly get diluted. Having an outcome based approach to the work, so not focusing so much on feature and function, but thinking what's the actual outcome that we're trying to produce here, and ensuring that stays in line. And then the catalyst for this, which we've discovered over the last few years, having tried many different cloud platforms, is really the thing that's given us the edge to be able to deliver outcomes very rapidly indeed, is the Google Cloud Platform itself. We can spin up a development environment on Google Cloud in 7 seconds and be productive within an hour, whereas on alternative platforms it often takes 2 to 3 days, and then we'll struggle to be able to hit the kind of cadence that we have on software releases. Doing 2 or 3 production releases a day is very tough to do on many of the other platforms, but we can do it on Google. So we're not getting paid by Google to say this, but they are certainly a critical success factor for anybody who wants to do super agile. So 3 weeks is obviously the name of our business, but at one point, in fact, Trevor Wood set us a challenge. He said, I know that what you can do in 3 weeks, and that makes a big difference, but how about trying to do something in 5 days? So he actually set us loose on the university campus to go and talk to students, and he said, I want to see what you can do in terms of delivering an outcome for us in a week. And this video basically describes that experience.
Our challenge was to build a technical solution inside a week that would solve a problem for a student at Monash. But to do this, we wanted to engage students at every step of the way, right from the very beginning to actually find out what some of their problems were, all the way through to the design, the build, the test, and the release of the product.
An app that actually had like all the rooms and stuff.
It'd be easier if there was an easy way to find places to study.
It became clear when we were talking to the students that there were some really top key issues that we could solve in a hurry. So we took that on board and we started development work straight away.
Problem with probably tech solution-wise would be Moodle.
If you're trying to find a computer lab to work in, you've got a group assignment or something.
Maybe more information about like free content. That's cool.
As a developer, it's critical that you get feedback, and the more feedback you get, you can feed that back into the build of the application. Without that feedback, you're sort of directionless. Everything's based on a hunch.
One of the really clear issues for us was students were saying a lot about their access to computer labs. There's high demand for that sort of facility, so we worked really hard to design a product around the customer need about how to find and how to use and how to book a computer lab here at Monash.
The pace that we work out is literally feature by feature, which is hour by hour. So for example, a student says, listen, I can't see this icon on the map, I don't even know where it is. We take that feedback and say, okay, well, we can incorporate that into a map. You build, test, get feedback from those users.
Actually, the first trial, I was entering my own.
Maybe like a kind of intermission between available and not available,
If we go to the library, not everyone can go to maybe like business economics.
Hey Sean, so good. So maybe add in, so next feature, add in.
And then build again based on the feedback that they were giving.
We spent the last week building a computer lab application which allows students to find where the nearest computer lab is.
That's perfect. That's I'm really excited about that.
The students' involvement right from the very beginning of the process all the way through to the end means that we've got a product that they really need and want.
So I think that it just highlights, I hope, the importance of this end user customer engagement piece. And the other thing that I just draw out of this is how important it is to have great communicators in your team. You saw there Sean talking about the importance of getting user feedback, and his engagement with the end users and customers, and as is the same with all of our developers, is absolutely crucial to ensuring that we're doing things that are only relevant and valuable to individual customers. So how can you do this super agile thing? There are a few sort of simple things to bear in mind here, which are kind of base requirements, I guess, that ensure that you can do this. So we have a very simple model around this. It's 4 things. It's culture, strategy, skills, and infrastructure. And those 4 things really ensure if you've got these in place or you're addressing these 4 things, you're much more likely to succeed in an ultra-agile way. So the culture thing really is around recognizing that you need to have innovation built into the culture of the business. It needs to be something that is recognized, rewarded, encouraged, and central to your philosophy around how the business is going to succeed in future, or the organization is going to succeed in future. The second thing is looking at skills. So one of the things that we've observed in talking to many of our clients who are trying to adopt this ultra agile, super agile approach is the skill sets of the people in their IT departments and their business analysts are not aligned necessarily to an agile approach. So there needs to be some work done either to help upskill those people or find people with the necessary skills to do that. And you know, we've helped organizations write job profiles to ensure that they're recruiting and they're training the right kind of skills to do this stuff. You've got to have a strategy that says it's digital first. So, you know, if there isn't a sense that the organization is embracing digital and has a sense of the potential for it, it's unlikely they're really going to understand the benefits of adopting super agile as an approach. And then finally, you've got to have the infrastructure to support it. So if, you know, for a lot of organizations we talk to who are constrained by compliance requirements, security requirements, et cetera, it becomes very difficult to move at a super agile pace. It's not impossible though. So there's certainly evidence that even in the most highly regulated and constrained environments, it's still possible to be agile. We just need to think about how we're going to provide sufficient protection, if you like, around the agile projects to enable them to deliver some benefit. And we've got some thoughts around that we'd like to share with you if that's something you're interested in. So that's it in terms of the formal side of this. Our time is up, 30 minutes. So I hope that's been useful to you. Very keen to continue the dialogue if there are those online who would like to do so. And we'll be back soon with another webinar tackling another aspects of the digital innovation world, and hope that you'll be able to join us for that too.